The woman he was obsessed with suffered from severe depression and would self-harm whenever she saw me. To ensure her safety, he disregarded my impending labor and dumped me at the old house in the countryside. 5 years after I was brutally assaulted and killed, Olivia was diagnosed with kidney failure. Doctors said a closest blood relative would have a higher chance of being a match for her kidney. Only then did the man remember me, her own sister. He frantically called me, ordering me to get back immediately. My 5-year-old daughter timidly said, "Dad." "Mommy, she passed away a long time ago." David Carter frowned, his voice full of impatience. "Whose child is this? Where is Sarah Miller? Tell Sarah Miller to get on the phone." Lily Miller stammered, You wait a moment." She put down the phone and ran to find Grandpa Peterson. "Grandpa, someone is looking for Mommy." The community elder, Grandpa Peterson, with a stoop in his back, slowly walked to the phone and picked up. "Is this Mr. Carter?" Finally. David Carter's face darkened instantly upon hearing an old man's voice. He pressed his temples hard, closed his eyes, and took a breath. When he opened his eyes again, his face showed suppressed rage. "Where is Sarah Miller? What, is she so afraid to take my call? First she lets a child answer, says she's dead, now she lets an old man answer, wants to say she's dead again? Doesn't she just want me to come pick her up myself? Fine, for Olivia, I'll go pick her up myself." With that, he hung up the phone without waiting for a response from the other end. The next day, David Carter drove to the old house in the countryside. He looked at the dilapidated old farmhouse before him and couldn't help but frown. The door was half open, and there was no furniture inside. Debris scattered on the floor, spiderwebs covered the house, inside and out. Even the broken windows were damaged. He looked up at the young man who had brought him, his eyes full of impatience. "Where is Sarah Miller? Tell her to come out and see me. As long as she's willing to donate her kidney to Olivia, I'll take her back." The young man looked troubled and said hesitantly, "Mr. Carter, why don't you wait for the community elder to come over?" David Carter narrowed his eyes, seemingly forcing himself to calm down. The community elder arrived at this moment, leaning on his cane. "Mr. Carter, hello." David Carter glanced at him, saying coldly, "Where is Sarah Miller?" The community elder put one hand behind his back. "Sarah Miller, she can't come out to see you." Upon hearing this, David Carter sneered, his expression growing colder. "What, are you going to say she's dead? Tell her, stop throwing these little tantrums, I won't indulge her. Tell her to come out and see me quickly. I've come to pick her up myself. What more does she want?" "What do I want? I don't want anything. I just wanted to live and watch my daughter grow up. But I couldn't even do that." At this moment, my soul stood by, staring blankly at him. 5 years ago, the night I was sent to the old house in the countryside, I gave birth to Lily Miller. Not many days later, Olivia Davis sent people to find me. She was jealous that I married David Carter, jealous that I was pregnant with David Carter's child. So she first instigated thugs to smash the old house, then had the thugs come to the old house to harass me every day. Then, she ordered people to brutally assault and kill me. Finally, she threw my shattered body into the remote woods, letting the wild dogs tear and gnaw at it. It was Grandpa Peterson, the community elder, who discovered I was missing. He sent people everywhere to look for me and finally found my body on the mountain and buried it for me. The community elder stroked his beard, sadness in his eyes. After a moment, he sighed deeply. "Sarah Miller, she died 5 years ago." David Carter's lips curved into a mocking smile, his expression becoming increasingly cold. "Community elder, do you think I'm a child? Someone like her, how could she be willing to die?" His hawk-like gaze swept over the people present, then he sharply ordered his bodyguards, "Turn the place upside down, find any trace of her for me." I floated in the air, watching the bodyguards violently banging on every door, house by house. Then they roughly pushed aside the neighbors who opened the doors and went inside to search for me. The neighbors, frightened, came out one after another. The entire community gathered, but David Carter still couldn't see me. His face grew uglier, and he angrily approached the community elder. He grabbed the community elder's collar and asked, tell me, where have you hidden Sarah Miller? If you tell me now, I can still be polite to you, otherwise don't blame me for getting rough." The community elder gave the same answer. David Carter finally lost his patience, and with a slight twist of his hand, he broke the community elder's arm. The community elder cried out in pain. A little girl rushed out from the crowd. The little girl wore clean clothes and had 2 pigtails. Her eyes flickered with fear, but she still ran to the community elder, asking with a sob, "Grandpa Peterson, are you okay?" David Carter was stunned. He frowned and looked the little girl up and down, finding her somewhat familiar. Lily Miller rushed angrily to David Carter and bit his leg hard. David Carter reflexively kicked her. Lily Miller fell to the ground, then struggled back up, staring at him intently. "Bad man, Grandpa already said Mommy is dead. Why are you still bullying Grandpa?" In an instant, David Carter's face changed dramatically, his gaze heavy as he looked at Lily Miller. "Fearing he would hurt my daughter, I instinctively floated in front of her, blocking David Carter. But I was just a soul. David Carter walked right through my soul and approached Lily Miller. He simply picked Lily up and examined her carefully. Lily Miller was lifted abruptly, her legs constantly struggling. David Carter stared at her face, which was similar to mine, and said through clenched teeth, "You're that bastard from back then." Instantly, he grabbed Lily Miller's neck, his voice filled with rage. "Tell Sarah Miller to come out quickly, or I'll choke this bastard to death." Watching my daughter struggling, I shouted, "David Carter, I'm here, I'm right here, let go of Lily." But no one responded to my cries. Lily Miller's face got redder and redder, her breathing becoming more and more difficult. I was so anxious I forgot I was dead and rushed to David Carter, trying to bite the hand that was choking Lily Miller. But I went right through his hand and bit the air. The community elder saw Lily Miller about to lose consciousness, and his eyes instantly filled with tears. Enduring the pain, he called out with difficulty, "Mr. Carter, Lily is your..." Before he could finish, the community elder was kicked to the ground by a bodyguard. He let out a painful moan on the ground. David Carter suddenly released Lily Miller, his cold eyes sweeping around, threatening, "Sarah Miller, if you don't show up in 3 days, I'll kill that bastard." Looking at the community elder lying on the ground in pain, and my daughter's neck that had turned purple from being choked, heartache and anger made me tremble all over. At this moment, my hatred for David Carter reached its peak. At the same time, I deeply regretted the feelings I once had for him. In the blink of an eye, 3 days had passed. This time, David Carter brought Olivia Davis with him. 5 years ago, she was arrogant when she came to the old house in the countryside, but now she was just as weak. David Carter carried Olivia Davis out of the car with tender eyes and gently placed her in a wheelchair. He didn't forget to carefully drape a thin blanket over her, his eyes full of concern for her. All of David Carter's tenderness was for Olivia Davis. As for me, it was only indifference or impatience. The community elder and I waited at the door early. Only, no one could see me. Seeing no one behind the community elder, David Carter suppressed his anger and said, looking at Olivia's weak state, "Is Sarah Miller really so heartless that she's unwilling to help her own sister?" Community elder, as long as you're willing to hand over Sarah Miller, as long as she's willing to cooperate and match for a kidney source, I'll build roads for the community and help the neighbors improve their living conditions. I'll also take Sarah Miller back to continue being Mrs. Carter. That bastard, I'll treat her like my own daughter. David Carter felt that he had made a huge concession. If they still weren't sensible, he wouldn't be polite. But the community elder still didn't give him the answer he wanted. "Mr. Carter, when Sarah Miller returned to the old house in the countryside 5 years ago, she was often harassed by the thugs nearby. I'm not sure exactly how she died. Only, when I discovered she was missing, I mobilized everyone in the community to search for her, and found her bruised and battered body on the mountain. I buried her body for her in the woods behind the house. If you don't believe me, go see for yourself." David Carter laughed in extreme anger, his eyes full of disbelief. "Are you trying to fool a child? If she's really dead, how did that little bastard come into this world, and how did she grow up?" The community elder looked troubled and sighed. "Lily was born the night Sarah Miller returned home. Sarah Miller died so suddenly, we couldn't just abandon the child, could we? Upon hearing this, Olivia Davis's eyes flashed with surprise and malice. Olivia Davis knew exactly how I died. That day, I had just finished my confinement period. Olivia Davis brought 3 men to the old house in the countryside. Before I could react, she had them hold me down. She slapped me several times directly. As if that wasn't enough to vent her anger, she forcefully ground her foot on my 5 fingers. It hurt so much I cried out, "Sarah Miller, you bitch. Why do you get to marry David just because you were born before me? Clearly, the person David loves is me." I struggled to look up at her, wanting to speak. But she seemed to want to vent all her anger on me, forcefully punching and kicking me. I tried to protect myself, but the men she brought held me down tightly. Finally, I lay on the ground, barely alive. Olivia Davis leaned into my ear and said, "The thought of you sleeping with David and getting pregnant makes me hate you so much, my sister. Sarah Miller, you dare to steal David from me, Olivia Davis. Even if you're my sister, you must die." As soon as she finished speaking, the 3 men began to brutally tear off my clothes and assaulted me. I lost consciousness, I don't know how many times, before I died. After death, I watched helplessly as she ordered people to throw me into the mountain. What goes around comes around. Here it was, 5 years after my death, Olivia Davis's retribution had come. The only closest blood relative who could save her was killed by herself. So she knew that whatever David Carter did, it would always be futile. I would never come out to see him. Olivia Davis weakly raised her hand, trying to grasp David Carter's sleeve. David Carter, who had been full of rage, instantly returned to his gentle and refined demeanor. He quickly bent down, held Olivia Davis's raised hand, and said softly, "What's wrong, Olivia? Are you feeling unwell again?" Olivia Davis gave a weak smile and slightly shook her head. "David, is sister still angry that she won't come out to save me?" I apologized to sister. I was wrong, I shouldn't have clung to David. But I really want to live. I want to stay with David until we're old." David Carter gently kissed her forehead and comforted her. "Olivia, don't worry, I will definitely save you." A hint of ruthlessness flashed in his eyes. My heart trembled violently, and I instantly had a terrible guess, shouting loudly, "No! Lily is your daughter. Don't hurt her." The sound of death could not reach the living. The bodyguards David Carter brought dragged Lily Miller out of the cellar and headed straight for the rooftop. The old farmhouse, being 2 stories, was 7 meters high. The community elder anxiously stood up, his voice trembling slightly. "Mr. Carter, what are you doing? Let go of Lily quickly, she is your child." David Carter's face was cold, his eyes hiding a trace of hatred. My child? Did Sarah Miller tell you that? I never touched her. How could we have a child? She cheated on me and gave birth to this bastard. If it weren't for Olivia pleading for her back then, this child wouldn't have had a chance to be born." Seeing the hatred in his eyes towards me, my thoughts were instantly pulled back to that night 6 years ago. That night was David Carter's birthday party. Olivia Davis drugged my drink, intending to send me to another man's bed. As long as my innocence was ruined, she could use it to make David Carter divorce me. Fortunately, I noticed in time and ran away. However, I was still affected by the drugs she gave me. When I woke up the next day, the person lying next to me, I clearly saw it was David Carter. Watching my daughter crying out "Grandpa" in fear, I desperately floated in front of David Carter, questioning him. "David Carter, if you didn't love me, why did you marry me back then? Since you could never let go of Olivia Davis, why didn't you go abroad to find her? She didn't leave the planet, you could have found her by taking a plane." David Carter suddenly looked up, meeting my eyes. If a soul could feel emotional fluctuations, I would probably be a vengeful ghost by now. Just when I thought he could see me, he said coldly, "Sarah Miller, I'll give you 10 minutes. If you don't come out, I'll throw your daughter to her death." My pupils constricted sharply. "No. I'm here. Don't hurt my daughter." No one responded. I floated up, wanting to save my child. But countless attempts to touch her always resulted in nothing. The community elder knelt and pleaded at David Carter's feet, begging him to let go of Lily Miller. But David Carter ignored him, looking down at the time on his watch. I cried out powerlessly. Olivia Davis, unnoticed in a corner, secretly curved her lips into a smile, her eyes full of triumph and satisfaction. I rushed over, hitting and kicking her. But it had no effect. 10, 9, 8, 7. David Carter heartlessly began counting down. I desperately knelt on the ground, watching helplessly as David Carter gave the order to throw my daughter from the 7-meter-high rooftop. I floated over to catch Lily Miller, but her body went straight through my hands. In the nick of time, the community elder, scrambling and crawling as if his life depended on it, rushed over, trying to catch Lily Miller. But as soon as he reached out, he was kicked to the ground by a bodyguard, spitting out a mouthful of blood, lying there. I stared blankly at the community elder's slowly closing eyes. With a bang, Lily Miller hit the ground. I watched as blood flowed from her mouth, and she painfully murmured, "Grandpa. Mommy." Instantly, I screamed heartbrokenly, "Lily. Grandpa Peterson." At this moment, a young man from the community rushed over with a paternity test report and shouted, "Mr. Carter, Lily really is your daughter, look." At the same time, a bodyguard also shouted, "Mr. Carter, we found the Mrs. S." David Carter frowned deeply, gazing at the weakening Lily Miller. He suddenly let out a cold laugh, mocking, "Sarah Miller, you truly are heartless. Watching your own daughter fall to her death right before your eyes, your heart is incredibly hard. I truly underestimated you." The young man didn't bother to give the paternity test report to David Carter. He anxiously shouted, "Quick, to the community hospital." David Carter looked disdainfully at the shouting young man. "This child isn't mine. Why should I care about her?" The young man threw the paternity test report at him. The report clearly stated, "DNA analysis confirms that David Carter and Lily Miller have a parent-child relationship. David Carter has a 99% probability of being Lily Miller's biological father." David Carter froze. He looked disbelievingly at Olivia Davis, then lowered his head to carefully re-examine the report, muttering, "How is this possible? This must be fake." Olivia Davis had been watching David Carter's every move. She struggled to support her weak body, slowly walked to his side, and embraced him. "David, are you okay?" David Carter clenched his fists, grinding his teeth. "Where is Sarah Miller? Bring her here. I'll show her now the price of daring to deceive me." The bodyguard who had just spoken looked troubled and stammered, "Mr. Carter, what we found was Sarah Miller's tombstone. We didn't find the person." David Carter's body stiffened, and a hint of surprise flashed in his eyes. But he forcefully suppressed it, feigning calmness. "Sarah Miller is so cunning, this must be her trick. I won't fall for it." He wasn't sure if he was talking to himself or to others. Then, with a dark face, he said, "Let's go see whether she's dead or alive." Olivia Davis reached out and tugged his hand, whispering, "David, I." Before she could finish, David Carter had already strode off, following the bodyguards. He didn't even realize how panicked he looked upon hearing of my death. So panicked that he completely forgot about Olivia Davis, whom he always kept in his heart, leaving her standing there. Olivia Davis watched David Carter's retreating figure, her fingernails digging into her flesh, her eyes dark. She murmured softly, "Sarah Miller, you won't let anyone rest even in death. But it's good that you're dead. No matter what, you can't steal David from me anymore." Her gaze shifted to Lily Miller lying on the ground, her eyes filled with malice. I froze. I spread my arms to block her, asking frantically, "Olivia Davis, what do you want?" My daughter wasn't dead yet, she still had breath. But she sneered and slowly followed David Carter. They arrived at my tombstone. David Carter gazed at the 4 crooked words, "Sarah Miller's tomb." Perhaps he didn't even notice his lips trembling, his hands clenched into fists. He tried to speak, but his voice was hoarse and rough. He practically roared, "I don't believe it, dig it up." The bodyguard, who hadn't completely lost his conscience, advised, "Mr. Carter, this isn't right. What if we disturb the missus?" His eyes were bloodshot as he stared at the bodyguard. "Dig. I want to see with my own eyes if it's her body inside, or Following his command, the bodyguards pushed the tombstone over and began digging with shovels. And I just stood there quietly, watching them uncover my coffin lid. At that moment, the surroundings were silent, as if time itself had stopped. A complete skeleton was revealed before them. David Carter stared at everything in disbelief. His lips trembled, and he choked out, "Go find a forensic expert, find someone to identify if this skeleton is Sarah Miller's." He desperately didn't want to believe that the owner of the skeleton was me. But on the skeleton's wrist was the bracelet passed down through the Carter family to their daughters-in-law. This evidence forced him to accept the cruel reality. David Carter stumbled forward, seemingly wanting to take off the bracelet. However, before he could reach it, his legs gave out, and he fell powerlessly to the ground. Olivia Davis, rushing as fast as she could, finally arrived to see David Carter with his head bowed, looking at the skeleton in the coffin with a face full of grief. Her eyes immediately filled with tears, and she said with a choked voice, "David, this, inside here is sister." After speaking, she threw herself into David Carter's arms and cried bitterly. David Carter's previously unfocused eyes suddenly focused, and he abruptly pushed the weak Olivia Davis away, angrily scolding, "Get off me, don't touch me." Olivia Davis was stunned by the sudden push, falling heavily onto the dirt. She gritted her teeth, struggled to get up, and called out to David Carter again in a weak voice, "David." Her tone was somewhat delicate, trying to evoke David Carter's tenderness towards her. However, this time, she was disappointed. David Carter ignored her completely, his gaze fixed on the skeleton. Olivia Davis watched David Carter's eyes filled with nothing but the dead skeleton, and a hint of malice and jealousy flashed in her eyes. Time passed second by second. David Carter remained in that position for nearly an hour. It wasn't until the forensic team arrived to examine the body that he finally moved. When they were about to take the skeleton, he pursed his lips and asked, "How long will it take to identify this person?" The leader looked at him, adjusted his glasses, and said extremely coldly, 24 hours. After they left, David Carter was about to follow suit but suddenly remembered something. Instantly, he ran down the mountain like an animal being chased. He didn't stop until he reached the front of the community elder's house. He gasped for breath and pointed at the empty ground, questioning emotionally, "Where is the child? Where did that child go? Why is no one watching her?" He grabbed a bodyguard's collar, yelling hysterically, "Is the child dead? Tell me quickly!" The bodyguard stammered, trembling, We all followed Mr. Carter up the mountain, we didn't notice." David Carter collapsed onto the ground, holding his head in pain. "Mr. Carter, Ow, what should we do?" he yelled, his eyes red. "Go find her." He took a deep breath, his voice trembling. "Once you find my daughter, send her to the best community hospital immediately for treatment." David Carter was filled with guilt and remorse. He had actually ordered his bodyguards to throw their only daughter from the 2-story rooftop. He was worse than an animal. He hated himself. Thinking about it, he started slapping himself. The neighbors hiding behind their doors were afraid of the group's frenzy and just wanted them to leave quickly. Someone, timidly, said, "Lily and the community elder have already been taken to the community hospital." David Carter immediately stopped the bodyguards, who were running around like headless chickens, to the community hospital. Inside the community hospital, Lily Miller's small body was connected to various machines, beeping sounds filling the room. Her heart rate suddenly dropped. Doctors took turns using the defibrillator, AED, but it was useless. Finally, her heart rate became a flat line. The moment Lily Miller's soul emerged, my empty heart felt pain for the first time. The tiny girl floated to my side and hugged me. "Mommy!" I held her tightly in my arms. But there was no joy inside. Only endless sorrow. My child had not yet experienced the beauty of this world, and she left it, filled with grievances and pain. When David Carter arrived at the community hospital, he was shouting and searching for Lily Miller all over the place. When he found Lily Miller in the emergency room, he only heard the doctor tell him, "I'm sorry, Mr. Carter, the child was brought to the hospital too late. If she had arrived a little earlier, she could have been saved." David Carter broke down. He held Lily Miller's body tightly, crying heartbrokenly. He screamed and shook the child's body, praying for his daughter to come back to life. But he didn't know that his daughter was in my arms, quietly standing by and watching him. I softly asked my daughter, "Lily, do you hate Dad?" My daughter's small head rested on my shoulder, her big eyes blinking as she said, "Dad? Lily doesn't have a dad. Lily doesn't hate Dad. But Lily dislikes that man. He made people throw Lily. Lily was so hurt, so hurt." I stroked her head and comforted her. "It's all over, Lily, Mommy is here." My daughter didn't hate him, but I did. Perhaps God felt the hatred in my heart, because I couldn't move more than 5 meters away from David Carter. In my helplessness, my daughter and I could only stay by his side. 24 hours passed. David Carter confirmed from the forensic team that the skeleton was indeed mine. Overwhelmed, he couldn't bear it and fainted. 3 hours later, he woke up, and the bodyguard reported to him, "Mr. Carter, the community elder is still alive. But he's also close to death. He's currently in the intensive care unit, ICU, on a ventilator, barely clinging to life." David Carter paused for a moment, as if he hadn't yet processed my death. The bodyguard repeated himself. He quickly got out of bed and said urgently, "Spare no expense, save the community elder." With that, he rushed out of the room. Then, he stopped and looked up at the bodyguard, asking, "Where are Sarah Miller and my daughter?" The bodyguard was stunned by his gaze. His eyes seemed to have lost their former brilliance, like deep black holes swallowing all life. They're both in the morgue." My daughter and I wanted very much to see the community elder, but David Carter dashed straight to the morgue. Our souls were drawn to him, and we had to follow him to the morgue. He looked at my skeleton, still unwilling to accept it. So, he hired the world's top forensic team and ordered advanced forensic techniques to analyze my cause of death. He wanted to know how I died. Or rather, he still held on to a 1 in 10,000 possibility that this skeleton wasn't me. During this time, David Carter often stared blankly at my and my daughter's bodies. He ignored Olivia Davis, the company, and everything outside. He also hired a renowned private investigator to investigate everything that happened before my death and find my killer. 3 days and 3 nights later, the forensic team gave him the answer: I was brutally assaulted and killed. In an instant, he seemed frozen, his body rigid and motionless. Then, he slowly closed his eyes, which trembled uncontrollably. Tears rolled down his cheeks. 7 days later, the investigator handed the information he had gathered to David Carter. He looked at my life from childhood to adulthood and couldn't help but frown, because he discovered that this was vastly different from what Olivia Davis had told him. Olivia Davis had told David Carter that our parents had always favored me since childhood. Whatever good food or fun things there were, our parents' first consideration was always me. In reality, the person our parents truly favored was her. What she wanted, I couldn't take. What she wanted to play with, I couldn't touch. If she caused trouble, I was punished. If she cried, I was hit. All because I was the older sister, I had to yield to my younger sister, I had to take care of my younger sister. However, I was only 2 years older than her. Just like 8 years ago, 20-year-old Olivia Davis was unwilling to enter an arranged marriage and went abroad to study without hesitation. Our parents then decided to have me marry David Carter in her place. For 2 years of marriage, David Carter had cherished me. He would prepare a heating pad and tea for me during my period. Rain or shine, he would pick me up and drop me off from work every day. He would defend me when my parents scolded me. When I was unhappy, he would clumsily try to cheer me up. Just when I thought we were in love and everything was naturally falling into place, Olivia Davis returned. The moment she saw David Carter, I knew she had fallen for him. Afterward, my parents told me that Olivia Davis had severe depression and asked me to divorce David Carter and give him to her. I refused. But I didn't expect that David Carter, upon learning this, would immediately bring Olivia Davis home to live with us under the same roof. It was then that I realized. The reason the powerful Carter family suddenly proposed a marriage alliance with the Miller family was simply because the person David Carter wanted to marry was Olivia Davis. As David Carter looked through the investigator's documents, he learned that Olivia Davis's severe depression was fake, and her self-harm was also fake. And that night 6 years ago, why he had relations with me and had no memory of it at all. It was all because Olivia Davis, upon discovering that the person she slept with was David Carter, had pulled a switcheroo, making him believe that the person that night was her, Olivia Davis. The more David Carter read through the documents, the more he was shocked by Olivia Davis's actions. By the time he saw that she was my killer, his eyes held no trace of light. The study door was gently pushed open. Olivia Davis's face was pale, fine beads of sweat on her forehead. She seemed unable to even stand steadily, looking as if she might collapse at any moment. David Carter looked up. The moment his gaze met Olivia Davis, an unspeakable darkness flashed in his pupils. If sister's soul is in heaven, she definitely wouldn't want you to be so sad. Even though sister is dead, you still have me by your side. I will always be with you. David Carter looked at Olivia Davis, a smile suddenly curving his lips. You're right, Sarah would definitely not want me to continue being down. I floated in front of him, made a face, and said without emotion, no, I wish you would stay down. My daughter did the same thing with me. Olivia Davis saw David Carter smile and thought he had gotten over it and had returned to being the gentle David she knew. Her lips curved slightly, and she was secretly happy. Sarah, look, David still loves me the most. Suddenly, Olivia Davis lost her balance and stumbled heavily forward. David Carter glanced at her coldly, making no move to catch her. She fell hard to the ground, her eyes half closed, as if she had fainted. Half a minute passed. Olivia Davis seemed to recover slightly. A pair of leather shoes appeared before her eyes, and she whispered very softly, David, save me. After saying this, she couldn't hold on and fainted. David Carter looked at the unconscious Olivia Davis, his entire face filled with gloom. I can't let you just die like that. Everything Sarah suffered, you will suffer too. After David Carter sent Olivia Davis to the community hospital, the doctor told him, Mr. Carter, Miss Davis's kidney source has been matched. Should we perform the transplant surgery immediately? He said nonchalantly, no need. Give the kidney source to someone who needs it more. The doctor looked surprised and said, but Miss Davis's body won't be able to hold on much longer if she doesn't get a kidney transplant. David Carter's voice was cold and indifferent, then spare no expense to keep her body going a little longer. He glanced at the doctor and warned, don't tell her about the surgery, otherwise. The doctor lowered his head fearfully, indicating he understood. He went to the community elder's room. The community elder, after days of treatment, had been moved from the intensive care unit, ICU, to a standard room. However, he was still lying in bed unconscious, on a ventilator, barely alive. David Carter stood by the community elder's bed and talked to himself, Grandpa Peterson, I was wrong. I'm sorry, I didn't believe you at first and even had you injured. You must live to see how I avenge Sarah, how I, the culprit, suffer a fate worse than death. The unconscious community elder couldn't respond to him. Holding my daughter tightly, I looked at him, full of confusion. I didn't understand the meaning behind his series of actions. Did he love me? But wasn't he always obsessed with Olivia Davis? Why did he change so dramatically after learning that Olivia Davis was my killer, acting as if he loved me deeply? I quietly watched David Carter hold the funeral for my daughter and me. I quietly watched him make his actions public. I quietly watched him fall from being a respected young entrepreneur to a scumbag despised by the world. David Carter silently endured the drastic shift from being adored by thousands to being condemned by everyone. Even when people yelled at him, he didn't care. He saw it as punishment for himself. In the days that followed, David Carter found the thugs who had bullied me and imprisoned them. He gave them plenty of food, put them in a shipping container, and dumped them in the Pacific Ocean, leaving them to fend for themselves. David Carter also found the 3 men who had assaulted me. He had all 3 castrated. Then, after having someone assault them as well, he sent them to the police station. David Carter used his connections to ensure the 3 men were imprisoned for life and could never get out. After dealing with these people, he picked up Olivia Davis from the community hospital. Olivia Davis's health had improved significantly. She thought David Carter had found her a kidney source and given her a transplant because the doctor had performed surgery on her while she was hospitalized. In fact, the doctor had only given her an experimental drug to make her appear better. Olivia Davis looked at David Carter with a happy expression, reached out and linked her arm with his, and smiled happily. "David, we can finally be together forever." David Carter's eyes emitted a cold light, and he curved a dark smile. "Yes, I can't wait." Olivia Davis's heart inexplicably skipped a beat looking at David Carter like this, and she subconsciously wanted to turn and leave. David Carter said. Unley grabbed her wrist and dragged her towards the basement. Olivia Davis looked at him in panic. "David, where are you taking me?" The path to the basement became narrower and darker. Midway, David Carter stopped and answered her question eerily. "Taking you to see Sarah." Olivia Davis was terrified, her expression horrified, and she cried out with a sob, "David, are you crazy? Sister died a long time ago. How can I see her? Take me back quickly." Olivia Davis struggled. David Carter dragged and pulled her into the basement. There, 4 or 5 impatient men were waiting. David Carter pinched her chin and said coldly, "Olivia, everything Sarah suffered in life, you, the murderer, will suffer too. Otherwise, I'm afraid if I go down, she won't forgive me." Olivia Davis was completely panicked but didn't forget to argue. "David, what are you talking about? I don't understand." David Carter sneered, his eyes full of hatred, and directly grabbed her neck, saying viciously, "Olivia Davis, stop pretending, I've already investigated everything." His grip tightened. He only released her after she rolled her eyes from lack of air. After being released, Olivia Davis scrambled to her knees in front of David Carter. "David, I was wrong, I was really wrong. I did that because I love you. Didn't you love me the most? Will you forgive me this once?" I promise I won't." Before she could finish, David Carter slapped her, cutting her off. "Olivia Davis, I used to love the kind and innocent Olivia Davis. Not you, this vicious woman who even killed her own sister. Accept your punishment." After speaking, David Carter turned and left. Olivia Davis, like grasping the only lifeline, quickly tidied herself up and ran to David Carter. She put on a facade of youthful innocence and said sweetly, "David, look, I'm still the kind and innocent Olivia." David Carter heartlessly pushed her away and personally locked the basement door. Soon after, Olivia Davis's piercing screams came from the basement. One day and one night passed. Olivia Davis was still alive. David Carter sent her to the community hospital. After she woke up, she looked at him with resentment. "David Carter, may you die a horrible death." David Carter smiled, "I will. But you're already doomed." Olivia Davis was stunned. "What do you mean? Didn't you always want to live? Actually, you didn't get a kidney transplant. The reason you feel better is because I had the doctor use an experimental drug. Soon, your body won't be able to take it anymore. You could have lived. The doctor found a suitable kidney source for you, but you don't deserve it. I gave it to someone who needed it more." After David Carter finished speaking, he seemed to lose his mind, laughing maniacally. Slowly, his eyes became wet, and tears quietly flowed down. Olivia Davis rushed forward desperately, but only managed 2 steps before falling weakly to the ground. David Carter went to the community elder's room and quietly told him everything he had done recently. "Grandpa Peterson, everyone who harmed Sarah has paid the price. I also need to go down and atone to them, mother and daughter." Late at night, David Carter committed suicide in our bedroom. My daughter and I watched from the side with expressionless faces. The moment he took his last breath, my daughter and I were suddenly enveloped by a white light. The moment David Carter's soul emerged, we disappeared before him. He knelt on the ground, regret would follow him for eternity, until he had a chance to reincarnate.